Welcome to another episode of Management Muse. I'm your host, Cindi Baldi, and this is my husband and co-host, Jeffrey Tumlin.
Yellow! Welcome to the podcast where we try to inspire better work performance. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for joining us today on Management Muse live stream. Yellow!
First ever. Yellow.
First ever. It's Geoff and myself, who you can see, but behind the scenes as a ghost is Rebecca. We didn't do that to her on purpose. She's perfectly lovely. She's behind the scenes, invisible, because her Wi-Fi clearly needs improvement. So if we, as you just experienced,
fiber for the net, we should be getting. It turns out this is going to be a costly live episode. It just costs us fiber.
Exactly. We just figured out that Rebecca does not have the tools, and you just saw it because the reason why our intro was breaking up is due to the fact that her Wi-Fi is not great. So she can be present, invisible, and so we will hear her voice. You all won't. She's sort of in the background making things happen for us, and she's monitoring the chat and will give us a heads up when something is going on.
Yep. All right. You want to get into our topic today, Manji?
Yeah. We're talking about difficult people at work, and some of the lessons will inevitably carry over to difficult people at home, but we're going to focus on work.
Yeah. We should tell them, a long time ago, back when we were first starting out, we used to do more like home stuff and we help people think through stuff at home. But we stopped doing that because it was too hard. Because people, like if this is the spectrum of human behavior, and these are all the acceptable things, and this is me at my best, and this is me being nasty, like at work, most people walk it back just a little bit because
they have to behave. They're at work.
Yeah.
Like everybody kind of knows a little bit that they have to behave at work.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, but at home, you get the full spectrum. You get all the bad behaviors. And so
there's no self-monitoring at home.
That's right. Yeah.
So you're going to get laid into if they're having a bad day, or if they are a difficult person, they let it completely fly, because there's personality types, and then there's just like having a bad day. And we're focused probably more on the personality types today, talking through people who are perpetually difficult to deal with.
Yeah.
We have an echo. There's an echo going on here. Probably.
Just ask. Just ask them in the poll what the other is. And then do people have the ability to actually talk? And so we can actually hear people talking to us in this thing?
So Rebecca just let us know that there's a poll where, because I don't think they can hear you, Rebecca. Is that right? So Rebecca just let us know that there is a poll that she took, and 57% of you said that your difficult relationships at work are with a peer, and then 43% said other. We did have a boss option, and 0% said boss, which yay bosses. I like that.
Yeah. Hey, this would be great. We may be done early if there's no difficult bosses, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that we're probably going to have to cover that anyway. Let me introduce you to the chickens. They're in the background. Up there is, let's see, that one on the coffee table. That's Cacciatore. No, that's Kung Pao. Sorry, that's Kung Pao. Then there's Cacciatore. Fajita's back there. Whole crew.
Yeah. Very good.
Okay, so let's get moving and talk about some difficult people.
Okay. Yeah, look, I think one thing I want to say about this poll is that it matters what the particular category of person is you're dealing with. And so when we think about communicating and interacting with difficult people, we basically usually talk about you want to do two things. You want to first manage yourself so that you're not doing anything stupid. And then the second is you want to have a strategy for how to try to make a little progress in a very difficult situation. And so there's what you and we sometimes call it, there's the self-management or self-regulation part, emotional regulation piece of dealing with difficult people. And then there's the strategy for how do you make progress when it's probably going to be challenging, that interaction. And we can talk in the next few minutes about both of those components. And then that exists within a situation of, do I have power over this person? Do they have power over me? Or are we, as the poll says, are we a peer?
Right, because depending on the power dynamics between you and the person, that obviously needs to be navigated a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And so why don't we start with maybe like the traits? You want to talk about the types of difficult people?
Yeah, sure. I think if we could ask a question in the chat and then be responsive to what people are asking about, I'd like to do that. But in the work that you and I have done for the past 19 years, we're navigating these kind of conversations all the time. And probably I would say the most common difficult person is somebody who's stubborn and who's not giving you who's basically not receptive to what you're saying. They have their own ideas. They want to go in a different way than you want to go. And so that's probably the big first category, is stubborn. And then the second large category of difficult people after that is what I would basically put in a kind of moody category. And so emotional, maybe quick to anger, ups and downs. You're never sure what you're going to get. And so people don't feel like, as you say all the time, you can be grumpy, you just need to be consistently grumpy. And so in that second category are people who aren't fairly consistently exhibiting behaviors. And so that's that kind of second card. So my two big categories are stubborn, number one, number two, moody or emotionally kind of all over the place.
Emotionally erratic.
Yeah. And then I know that you like, as a third category, people prone to drama. And those people take a lot of our energy when they're around. And so that's maybe three to start with.
Well, and I think that they're different too, because it's not just dealing with a difficult person. It's dealing with a difficult person who likes to make it a show. So you wind up dragging in more people than just the person, yourself and the person you're having an issue with, because they'll take it up in the middle of a room loudly.
Yeah. And it's, the term has become kind of trendy, but it's great research behind it, right? Psychological safety. And what happens when people in a group setting lose their cool is that everybody else takes note, like, this moment isn't safe. And so we need to crouch in and kind of be defensive or basically stop talking. And then whoever did that, whoever lost their cool, everybody files that away of, I don't know when that's going to happen again with this particular person. And so in that way, sometimes that drama category bleeds back into the ups and downs of the emotions.
We had some voting for subordinates come in.
Okay.
So 7% boss, 50% peers, 7% subordinates, and 36% other right now is where the tally is showing. Before we continue on, I do want to share a funny anecdote that came in. So a shout out to JC at Ward.
JC.
Hello, JC. And thanks for sharing your story. She was talking about she was at church when she was in college, and the minister said something to the effect of, everyone has a weird roommate story, but if you don't, then you are the weird roommate.
Yeah, there's something true. And, I think for clarification, we probably need to address the other, because I think, let's not forget, the other may very well be home and relatives. And so let's make sure we devote a little bit of time to talking about family. But when Cindi and I are talking about difficult people, we're talking about people who are exhibiting a behavior consistently that makes it hard to interact with them. And so it's not just somebody having a bad day. That's all of us. That's a regular person having a bad day. It's not what we're talking about. We're talking about somebody doing something. So if you use our three big categories, and there are many others, but they're either very stubborn, and they're stubborn almost all the time. And it's not just to you. It's stubborn to you. It's stubborn to Cindi. It's stubborn to our number one fan, Mike. It's stubborn to a lot of people most of the time. And that's what makes for a difficult person. Stubborn, category 1, category 2, emotional volatility, category 3, prone to drama. There are others. You can have somebody who's very quiet, they're hard to draw out, and they're like that with everybody. You can have people who gossip a whole lot, and that creates different sets of problems, but they're doing it all the time with a whole bunch of people. And so it's a pattern of behavior that's fairly consistent with most people most of the time. And so that's what we mean when we say different.
And so I think, sort of what you were talking about with like the drama, maybe drama and a little bit of like gossip, like sometimes when we're talking to people in organizations, the management in organizations, like they'll have somebody who has taken a write-up and like basically gone around showing everybody their write-up and are like trying to generate like sides, right? Like how unfair they're being treated. Like most people don't do this. Most people, when they get a write-up, they're like, yeah, maybe I'm going to keep that to myself.
Yeah.
And deal with it. But this person is actually trying to undo the write-up by basically getting a collective on their side. Yeah. And so I think that's like an example. And usually they're getting written up for something similar along these lines with like causing problems with their behavior. So, I think that's a good example of sometimes what we see in organizations, like these people who like sort of like collective action is really good, in many respects. Like it gives people who are not in powerful positions a chance to have some power. But these people are doing it like for like their own stuff. Yeah. When like they were, they had done something that probably wasn't great, and they've been called out on it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that we see a lot of weird stuff now that I reflect on your comment, because it's not normal.
Go ahead. Share some stories, Jeffrey.
Well, so if it's okay, let me talk about some of the strategies, and then I'll give an example at the back end.
Okay.
And so bread and butter, how to deal with difficult people. The general strategies for any kind of difficult person is know going in exactly what you're trying to accomplish. I'm trying to tell this person Would you get some funny comment?
It's from Mike, our greatest fan. He said, could the categories be like a box of chocolates?
Maybe. Yes.
That's a Forrest Gump reference if you're too young to know that.
Yeah.
Life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get because you know how like those flavors, you can never figure out what you're biting into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the emotional, that's the second category, right?
Right.
It's that, and so I'm glad we're having this conversation. Difficult people can be difficult because you know what you're getting and you're getting it all the time and it's tough. And so a stubborn person is tough all the time. They're tough with you. They're tough with almost everybody else. You don't know how to get around it. Somebody prone to drama. They're hard to deal with. They're going to cause a scene. And so you know what you're getting, and that can play in your mind, and you can make it harder that like, I got to talk to this person. And so then you psych yourself out and you're.
Yeah. Let's get to that regulation, that interpersonal, what they have to do. Maybe that's a strategy you're going to get to. I have some questions here that are specific for difficult people. And so I'm going to put them out there and then maybe you can hit the strategy.
Yes. But to answer our greatest fan, Mike Granberry, our greatest fan, to answer his question, sometimes the difficult people, you know what you're getting, and that makes it difficult. Sometimes what's difficult about them is you're not sure what you're getting. That's the particular category.
Right. That's the emotion. That's the erratic.
Yeah.
Emotionally erratic.
That is very interpersonally destabilizing to people, to not be at least partially certain what they're likely to get from another person. I mean, if you're anybody listening to this phone, who has a friend or a parent that they love, you're like, I know when I call my mom what I'm getting. And she can be herself, but I know what I'm getting. And if you have a friend you call, you know what you're getting. And so there's something very grounding about that. Okay, go ahead with your questions and we can hit some strategies.
Okay, so I'm going to, I think, leave the name off just in case I'm protecting the innocent here. But I do appreciate the comment. So one of them was, what should I do with a difficult coworker who's drama drawn and my boss won't do anything about it?
Yeah, I have an answer. Do you want me to answer or do you want to answer?
No, you go first.
Yeah, so look, it's very difficult for you to act on a peer if you don't have your boss's support and you're trying to do anything more than just be a good colleague. And so embedded in that question is basically you as a peer want that person to change. Well, I mean, I don't want to be a downer, but that almost never happens. Or it's very difficult without any, if you don't have any formal authority, then you have to rely on your interpersonal gift of, do we have a deep enough relationship? If I tell you this is bothering me, will you back off of it a little bit? And if not, I'll give a great example. And I mean, it sounds like it's out of the movies, but I mean, this just happened last year at a place that we work. This is a true story. They're in a bunch of cubicles and somebody likes to listen to music and they have it, it's 2005. So it's in their ears, right? This is not exactly out of office space, but the person in the next cubicle could hear it. And this person was a little older and a little hard of hearing. And so they had it loud and they could hear it through the ears and it was bothering this other person. And so the boss didn't want to do anything about it. It's bothering the person trying to work. And now we're getting to this self-regulation part. The person, I tried, just wear earplugs. Oh, I don't want to wear earplugs. I don't like wearing earplugs. All right, well, and we talk about all the things that this person could do, but it was really bothering this person. And I asked him, look, why is this bothering? It shouldn't bother you this much. It's not that big a deal. The boss isn't going to let you move to the other side of the office. So the long story short, the solution was to try to rely on goodwill. And so the person talked to their colleague and said, look, this is what's happening. It's hard for me to concentrate. And in the beginning, the other person's response was defensive. Well, it's in my ears. Like, this helps me work.
Yeah, they were trying to not be inconsiderate by having it in their ears. They just didn't realize it was still carrying.
Yeah. And then eventually the defensiveness, this is all within the same 2 or 3 minute conversation, the defensiveness receded a little bit. And they started like trying to put their heads together. And the person with the earphones says, my husband has a pair of earphones that he doesn't use. They're different. Let me see if I can figure out how to get them working in my phone, and let me try those tomorrow. And sure enough, they were different. They were more in the ear. And so it worked out to be it was good enough. And that we rely on that kind of goodwill, the goodwill between neighbors, so to speak, all the time in organizations. And it's better when we do, so that we don't have to escalate anything up that isn't absolutely essential. And so my short answer, what do I do with a difficult colleague who my boss won't do anything about? Choice 1, draw on some of your goodwill and try to have a very narrow conversation focused on the one thing you want, and don't let it get beyond that. Don't let it escalate beyond that, and be prepared to repair it if it does. And then option 2 is, in these kind of situations, can you ask yourself, how bad is it actually? Can I live with this? And how much of this am I inflating in my own head? And then the final third option is there somebody in the office who gets along better than anybody else with this person? If so, can you use them as a kind of shuttle diplomacy go-between? Or are there any lessons to learn from what this person is doing that you might be able to do? And those are my kind of 3 answers to that question.
I think mine are related, but a little bit differently. Like I think you always try to solve it first at the lowest level possible. And because many people don't like to have uncomfortable conversations, they will tend to ask their boss to resolve the issue instead of at least first having a conversation with the person. And when you're having that conversation with the person, it's, like, this was written as somebody who's just drama prone. But like Geoff just said, like, you're having the conversation about one specific issue and not about the overall behavior. And you're approaching it from the standpoint of curiosity. Like, look, I understand you work better with music. A lot of people believe that. I understand that. And I understand that you're actually trying to be considerate by putting it in your ears. Unfortunately, I can still hear it. And so are there any other options? So that way I can do my work without distraction and you can do work in a way that's enjoyable and productive for you. And that usually, there may still be a little bit of defensiveness because somebody knows that, like, they're being called out, but you just give them a few minutes and usually people will bounce back from that. And so, like, that's that first thing. If it doesn't happen, then I think the next level is, looking at the situation yourself. And I think you got to ask yourself a question before you go to anybody else. And that question is this really impacting me, or am I jammed up because I perceive an injustice? Because people get super wrapped up in feeling like, well, why does this person get to listen to music? Like, that doesn't seem right. Why are they getting that perk? Well, maybe there is an injustice there, and that's what you're getting wrapped up in. Or maybe it's just like, if you really wanted to, you could have the same level of permission to do it as well. Like, we see this more often with people who wind up having some time off, and the boss knows why they're taking the time off and they have a legitimate reason. But like, as managers, you can't share that with everybody. And so then everybody's like, well, this is unfair. They're getting all this extra time off and I'm doing all their work. And like, definitely, I see why you would be irritated with that. But if you had a conversation with, about like sort of your ability to take time off if you needed it, you'd probably find out that if you had a legitimate reason, you'd be able to take off the time too. Like, there are some organizations that know that they don't pay top dollar. And so they strive to be flexible. They strive to make it like an easier workplace to actually live with. And so you have to like do a reality check on what is actually bothering you. Is it the sound, or is it a perceived injustice? And if it's a perceived injustice, is it really an injustice? And if like the boss knows about it and it's an injustice, you may just have to settle into, okay, this person is getting a perk. Like, there's probably some benefit that they're providing that I can't see. And like, you have to sort of let that go. And we can talk about that a little bit more with the mental management. If that doesn't exist, if you've gone through like those two levels, then I think it's going to the friend who might be able to help you figure out how to approach. And if that doesn't work, then maybe you're going to the boss. But you're not going around trying to like gather a bunch of people in the office to form cliques to go to war with this person and be like, you're a horrible person over this thing. You are only seeking out help that you think can resolve the issue. And you're trying to always keep it at a very low level to allow the other person to save face.
Yeah, it's a good point. I hadn't thought about the injustice in it, but you're right. We spend a lot of time helping people dial in their response so that it's not coming in hot, and they're more likely to be persuasive. A lot of times people, so there's two things embedded in that. When a lot of times smart, well-intentioned people who love their companies get worked up about an issue that isn't actually that big a deal when they stop and think through it and consider a few different angles, or get in one or two pieces of data they didn't have. When people do feel that sense of injustice, as you mentioned, or that the things are inequitable, it's distressing and upsetting. And so instead of coming across as persuasive and thoughtful, it's very easy to come across as frustrated and upset. And that reflexively encourages people to activate their ancient responses to be defensive. Like, this person's not all right. I need to kind of protect the space and try to get out of this situation as fast as I can.
I think also like a good strategy to sort of help get out of your head. So we're starting to get into somebody else's question, which was, with an emotionally unpredictable person, how can I get out of my head and emphasize without presupposing the other person is always reacting to me personally, which is a great question.
Yeah. And can I answer that if it's okay? A difficult person is doing this behavior to almost everybody. If it is, then it's illogical to take it personally. Well, they're so stubborn and I can't get it. Or what is it they're asking about? Emotionally volatile?
Emotionally unpredictable person. How can I get out of my head and emphasize without presupposing the other person is always reacting to me personally?
And so the first is logic. if they're doing it to you, and they're doing it to your baby's mama, and they're doing it to your boss, and they're doing it to your uncle, and they're doing it to the chickens in the background, if they're doing it to all these people, then logically it's not personal. And we do this all the time because we feel like whenever there's an interaction and something potentially face sensitive, to use your word, or potentially negative to us comes, that it hurts. And so, we're like, oh, I can't believe that happened to me. Well, that person does this to all these other people. It can't be, the behavior isn't personal if they're doing it to a bunch of people. Now, if they're doing it to just you, that's a whole different issue. That's a relationship problem. That's not a difficult person. If somebody's only stubborn to you, and they're not stubborn to their mom, and they're not stubborn to their uncle, and they're not stubborn to these 3 coworkers, then there's something relationally happening. And that, you need to investigate that in a way that you and I do not recommend that people investigate difficult people. And this is an important point. If you can identify this behavior happening in most situations to most people, then stop trying to put your psychologist hat on and figure out what's going on and stop doing that and stick to the bedrock kind of 3 behaviors for the interaction. Have a very narrow focus. If you get an agreement, lock it in and get out of there. And then be prepared. You may have to repair in this conversation. You may have to save their face. You may have to do things to signal, hey, can we think about this? I hear you. Can we try it from a different angle? And so you may have to repair a few times. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make you upset, to see if you can reset the conversation and actually achieve something in it. And that's the bedrock for a difficult person. Because if the behavior is pervasive, multiple people, multiple situations, you're seeing it a lot, you're not going to fix it. And so give up and see if you can instead salvage a small victory or a little piece of progress from whatever you need in the interaction, and then move on. And if you can do that over, 6, 7 interactions, you may become that person that other people in the office or at home look to and say, well, that person can get along with this person better than anybody else. And that could be you.
So I have a couple of things to add to this. I was just talking to somebody the other day, and it's clearly that the other person has some baggage that they're bringing into the situation, but they're in her head and really causing a drain on her. And so in talking to her, I generally agree with Geoff's advice, but we also have to think about, to me, when somebody is like that constantly, I try to find the compassion for them, because something has happened that makes them act that way. And if you can find the compassion, then you give yourself the space to be able to find a way to work around it, because then it doesn't feel like it's so personal. Because the truth is what I see most of the time is it has absolutely nothing to do with you and everything to do with their history and where they've come from. And yes, they should be getting EMDR. But we can't always tell people to do that, because
you always tell people to do that.
I always tell people to do that. And I told this woman to do it, because this is the rest of my story. So now the person who was giving her problems has, they have problems. They're a good worker, but they have problems. And so that really ties this leader up in a bind, because she wants the good worker, but this person is living in her head. And so, we went through some of the ways that I tend to think about it, which is, again, finding the compassion and realizing that they've got stuff going on, and she knows that she has stuff going on, but she's just not able to not take it personally. And through talking to her, the conversation is because she has baggage. And so like they're two bags, they're fighting for the same hold, right? And so and so it doesn't always go this extreme. I know Geoff is joking around about me recommending EMDR. It's because like the people I have recommended for it, and I don't do EMDR, by the way, so I'm not making any money off this.
That's the
eye movement. It's a type of therapy that basically uses, like, it's more than just talk therapy. It basically pulls off of the little bit that we actually know about sleep and what the brain does during sleep. And the eye movement, it signals a time in your sleep cycle where basically the events of the day are getting stamped and stored. And when they're stamped and stored, it's a memory. But when they don't get stamped and stored and they get triggered, it's like it's happening to you in real time. And it can be either from a traumatic event, like a big one-time traumatic event, or it could be like long-term chronic trauma. Could be either. And so what the difference is with EMDR is, yes, you are talking about what happened to you, but you're doing it while either listening to a sound or they make your eyes move like they're in REM. And that helps every single time you do it. And it is actually pretty fast. It helps get it stored. So anyway, this particular person, because of like the severe baggage and like we went through things that she could do like on her own, like there's a lot of research on just 20 minutes a day writing about the trauma. Like you do it like 3 days and like you should start to see a lift, and you're not worried about what you're writing, you're just writing. And so she had tried a number of techniques to try to get a hold of her own brain. And so you have to think about whether or not like you need to take it up a notch and actually get some help. If like this is happening to you and you're not able to sort of disconnect from taking it personally when somebody's coming at you and logically it's actually not about you. Like you can see that they're doing it to everybody. You know enough about them to know that it's just what they're carrying into the situation. Like it doesn't actually, I don't know who needs to hear this, but like somebody who does that to me, it doesn't really bother me. Like I try to take a little bit of what's happening and think critically, like, should I actually be changing my behavior? Because I'm always trying to keep my defenses down, to take in the feedback, to try to make sure that I'm not just blowing somebody off artificially. But after I do that check and I realize that it's their issue, then I will see if there's something that I can do for them. But like, I just don't take it personally. And I think if you're not carrying a lot of baggage with you, you'll get to that. And if you're not able to do that, then you probably have some work to do. You don't necessarily have to jump right to EMDR. You can try some of like these cognitive practices that help calm your brain. But basically, you have to stop ruminating. And if you're ruminating on it, you have a problem, and we need you to start building the skill. And once you build that skill, your whole life gets better. Because you're not just ruminating about this person, you're ruminating about a whole bunch of stuff, and you just can't shut it off.
Yeah.
You got anything else?
Well, I think it gets at that first of the two main pillars, right? If there's two main pillars to this difficult people conversation, the first pillar is this emotional regulation. And, you can always make things worse, as we say all the time. No matter how bad something is, all you have to do is act like a fool and you make things worse. And so the reason that this is so relevant with difficult people is that they're very frustrating. And that grinding irritant of frustration can cause us to not restrain an impulse and say something we'll regret, or snap at them, or otherwise demonstrate to a person that I'm irritated at you. And we're very sensitive. People are very sensitive to that, And so it caused the conversation to get off track very quickly. And then the second kind of pillar of this discussion with difficult people is, then what are you going to do in the actual conversation? And so we've talked about that already. Basically, know what you're talking about, have modest goals. If you get agreement.
Yeah, the only thing I want to add to that, because I don't know if it's like, I know you well enough to know what you're saying. I'm not sure it's coming across. But most people go into, if they get the courage to have the conversation, most people go in and their goal is, I want to solve everything. And sometimes, like, even within the conversation as you're having it, you need to start pulling back your goals and go in realizing that very few conversations, when there's a problem, does everything get resolved in that one conversation. That you're probably looking at multiple conversations, and inside any single conversation, you're looking for that one little piece that you can get agreement on and move forward. And it doesn't mean that the whole thing is dropped. It doesn't mean that the whole thing is resolved. It means you're going to take the win and then come back another day to maybe explore the rest of what's going on.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think on the emotional self-regulation side, your point is a good one of, like, you're trying to not, like, we have problems. Our problems are this big, but it's very easy for us to puff them up and think they're this big. And difficult people do that. Difficult people cause problem inflation. So I don't want to have the conversation with you because you're erratic, or you're moody, or you're prone to drama, or you're stubborn, or you try to, you basically, there's a place where we work and they have somebody and this person just talks, will burn out all the clock. And so that's another type of difficult person.
Yeah, that's a person. There may be multiple reasons, but generally I find that's a lonely person.
Lonely?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I've also seen cases where that is, they're afraid. Like, the actual topic, as you're getting close to it, they're just trying to burn the clock. I see that as well. But these... Okay. Yeah.
We just got the 15-minute heads up for y'all. That's why we're both shaking our heads. Okay.
Yeah. Anything else? Let's.
Yes.
Let's take some more questions. But basically, don't inflate your problems. How big of an issue is this actually? And then trust yourself to have a decent chance of making a little progress. Like Cindi said, you don't have to, if the problem's been building for weeks and months and years, don't expect that you're going to solve it in one conversation. That doesn't make sense. And trust yourself to be able to either make a little progress or extract yourself from the situation without things being a lot worse. Trust yourself.
I think that it also goes to the other person, right? So the emotionally erratic or drama tends to overinflate, take a little problem and make it much bigger, right? It's like, so we're doing it because we're afraid to have this conversation. And so we go in and we're like, oh, this is going to be awful. And we got to scale ourselves back down. But also within the conversation, you're going to hear like all, never, like terms that are just all encompassing. And you just have to help them scale back. Well, give me an example of when, or is it really all? Like, maybe we can be more specific, because that would be a better conversation to have. Like, all is just like, what do you do with all? Or what do you do with never? Like, there's nothing to work on there. It's like an altruism.
Sure.
But if you can get into like actual types of situations, sorry about that with the microphone. If you can get into actual types of situations that are causing the problem and like deflate it, then I think you can start to make some progress. Plus, like, they're doing this to themselves. Like, they're not just doing this for fun, right? Like, they're inflating it in their head, and it's a huge deal. And so, like, you helping them to see that it's not everything actually helps calm them down, right, in the situation too. Just like it helps you calm down in the situation and deal with it. So that's the only thing else that I would add to that, I think. So you want another question?
I want 500. Give them lightning round.
All right. So for managers of difficult people, if they are difficult across many interactions, do we coach that or move them on to another company?
Well, we always advise moving people on. No, I'm kidding, of course, but
no, we don't always advise that. But we don't advise like having your culture erode just because. So a lot of times you have like great employees, and as soon as somebody knows they're a super great employee, some of that self-monitoring we talked about previously in their behavior goes away. All of a sudden, they're treating you more like you're their kid, and they're giving you the full Monty.
That's from the Power research by Jeffrey Pfeffer.
Sure, because Jeffrey Pfeffer talks a lot about how organizations to some degree actually suppress our personalities a bit. Weak or strong context, basically.
And then so, when you finally get the influence or the authority or the power, then you relax that and you're a bit more of yourself. And so that can sometimes come across as why did this person become a jerk? Actually they were always a jerk.
Always a jerk.
They were just covering it up up until they got to office where they didn't have to cover it up.
Yeah, so Pfeffer's famous statement or saying is power doesn't corrupt, power reveals. And being a top employee is a form of power. It's expertise, right? And so, I don't even know where I was going. You got me on a.
I know. It's because isn't he your
You're
other
a difficult
boyfriend?
Person, huh?
Isn't he your other boyfriend?
Yes, he is my other boyfriend. He's my academic boyfriend. Okay. That's what it's only of the mind. I don't think Pfeffer has any idea who I am. I mean, I know who he is. He's been, and I've been in rooms with him and stuff like that, but he's like super academic, and I just like his mind. Yeah. So the question was about moving them on. So the question is or the answer I would say is, we always try, right? Because it's a great employee. Like, it's only going to be great employees who get this effort. If you're a lousy employee and you're showing up as difficult, you're getting out.
That's right. That category never gets a question.
Right. Yeah. And so, you give it an effort, right? You're probably giving it an effort while you're shoring up the hole that they're going to leave if you have to take them out. Now, it'd be great if they change, and every once in a while you can get somebody to change. I got a doctor who is a real problem, and I got him to change because I got him to agree to actually take time off, and in taking the time off, he got sleep. And then he became the best doctor that the place had ever had, and they put him on the board, and
That's a true story.
Yeah. Right. So Rebecca's making me say it was not my doctor. It was a doctor at a hospital that I was working at. I assumed that came through, but maybe it didn't. She's good at catching that stuff. So, I was the last resort coach. This guy was getting moved out. And in the conversations, I was horrified at the fact that he was on call 7 days a week. Like he was either working or on call. And so I'm like, well, okay, we have to start pulling back a little bit. And I mean, we got to 1 day off a week of not being on call and not being on the clock. And that was enough, which personally, that would not be enough for me, but that was enough for him. And all of his behavior changed. And so, we should try. Because it could be a strain that we're putting on them that we don't realize that we're putting on them. It could be personal.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, the example is a good illustration that sometimes it's not a difficult person, it's a difficult situation.
But it's a chronically difficult situation. And so it can start to look like a difficult person.
That's right. And so the Cindy's solution was actually situated. These are much easier to fix. Most of the time when people think there's a personal problem, a people problem, it's actually a people problem. And it's somebody has something going on that it's going to be very difficult to unravel. In this instance, Cindy's mentioning, they thought it was a people problem. They were at Cindy was their last straw, basically. And she realized it was a situational problem. The guy was basically sleep deprived. And so because she had the green light from the CEO and because the doctor didn't want to get fired. I mean, so there's a lot working in. Once Cindy had the insight, the hospital was able to let him back off a little, and then the doctor was able to back off as well. And it actually completely changed his behavior. Sometimes what we think is a people problem is actually a situational problem.
And that situational problem, so this was the other piece of it, is that one was an organizational constraint that had basically put stress on this person for a very long time. They're not always organizational. Sometimes when, people have just challenging home lives, they're not actually a difficult person. They just have things going on that make them sort of like this doctor who was just exhausted. And so sometimes in the coaching, you can uncover that and save somebody. But, if you've tried, a couple of different ways and the person is being destructive to your culture and they behave themselves, because what usually happens is when an intervention happens, they behave themselves because they're aware that their behavior is a problem. And so they're self-monitoring. They realize that they have to behave and they're paying attention to it. And they'll go a couple of months and maybe 6 months. I think maybe that's like the outside length of time. And so you're in this cycle of every 6 months, this person comes back with the same problem over and over again, because as soon as it stops being at the forefront of their awareness and they're not self-monitoring anymore, well, the trait comes back because it is a trait. It's a difficult person with a problematic trait. And so from there, it's whether or not you can protect everybody else in the organization while having this person work. I mean, remote work certainly might go a long way towards keeping a perfectly great employee, but not damaging your culture.
Yeah.
So you might be able to be creative and find a way to basically keep the great person, the great worker, while not damaging your culture. But if you run through all that and the cost is damage to your whole organization versus, having to find somebody to sort of fill the hole of their productivity, then it's probably time to let them go.
Yeah. Yeah, let's do lightning round. I'll say, to answer this question, I agree with everything which said makes great sense. Usually, if the question is, do I keep working with this person or do we try to move this person along? Usually comes down to three things. One is, how much patience do you have? And so we keep trying stuff until we run out of patience. Two is, does behavior get so egregious that we just can cut out all the bull and move this person along? Three, does the other person have an epiphany of some kind? And they realize, oh, I need to actually do something different. That happens, but it's not, not with great likelihood.
The epiphany is usually related to the belief that they have embedded in their role. So we had a leader come into a very gentle organization, and that person came from IT, which is generally not super gentle organization. And so she had a schema in her head for how a leader works based on her experience in IT that was fairly brutal, especially to a very gentle organization. And there was the possibility that she would have had an epiphany as soon as she realized that like her schema was just wrong for what a boss looks like. But unfortunately, we didn't, in her case, we did not get that time to be able to do that. But that's where the epiphany will come from. It's that it sort of goes back to the Stanford prison state study that's famous. You know, like you take all these college students and you put them in these roles, and all of a sudden they're acting in ways that are shocking, but they're acting in the ways that they think the role requires. And so if you have somebody who has the epiphany, it's usually because they realize, oh, yeah, my role the idea of my role is very different than the reality.
Yep. Let's do all the questions that we have in less than 30 seconds each. Lightning round.
I work with somebody who's stubborn and it makes me crazy. What can I do about it? I mean, I don't know if any of these are lightning round.
Well, I'm in a lightning round.
All right, go.
First thing is make sure that what you're calling stubborn isn't just they don't agree with me, because that's different. People don't have to agree with you. Stubborn, are they actually making it difficult most of the time on most of the things with most of the people? That's a difficult, stubborn person. Somebody who's just not doing what you want, that's just another human being, and you have to work on your persuasion.
So you got your lightning round, or are they being stubborn because there's a fear back there?
Yep.
And they're using the stubbornness to not reveal the fear. Okay. Next one. Oh, well, we kind of handled this one, but I'll do it. How do I handle
we handled it, move on.
Okay. At the beginning of this discussion, Cindi mentioned when these situations happen at home, it's more difficult because self-regulation isn't a factor. How does that factor impact these strategies?
You go ahead and take it. I mean, it makes it harder. I wish I don't want to end the podcast on this, but people act worse at home. They treat each other more poorly at home because there's not that little moderator of you can't get fired from home as easily as you can get fired from work. And so you have to appeal more to the angels of your good nature to be nice to people at home. That's it. That's my lightning answer.
Good enough. I would say adjust your schema for the role and make it so that way you say, I can't treat the people I love the most in my life this way. And make a decision that those are the rules you're going to play by. Some people don't want to take responsibility. They see themselves as the victim in everything.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, sounds terrible, right? Like our job is almost never to convince somebody else to change something deep about themselves. And so scale back your expectations. One of the 3 planks. This will be my last words. Like you're working yourself up about somebody who, has got a problem that they can't fix and you're not going to be able to fix it. The good news is you don't have to. You just have to help them work with you on this report for the next 3 weeks. And so narrow it to that. And then try to focus on that only. Just, we're going to work on this thing together. If you get a little bit of agreement, lock it in and move from that forward momentum and be prepared that you're going to have to repair in that situation to try to give it a chance to figure out a way to work with this person. You're trying to work with people, not fix people.
Good enough. I think that's the end of our 1 hour live. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Your questions were great. We appreciate it. I don't know. We'll figure out if we're doing this again. It was fun. I had a good time. I don't know about all of you.
Yank you. Good to see you, Taylor, in the middle of the day.
Was that yank you? Was that like yellow yank you?
No, thank you. Thank you very much. Yep.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for Rebecca and everybody. Yep.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today on Management Muse. We are a podcast/YouTube channel that we hope is entertaining and educational. If you are on YouTube, we would appreciate you subscribing and maybe leaving a comment and a like. If you are on any of the podcasts listening to this, we would appreciate stars, following, comments, all the good stuff. We want to say thank you to Christina, Sarah, and Rebecca, and then, of course, everybody at Design at Work. And then just as a last-minute reminder, we also want to mention that we are management and communication professionals working in the field, but also have degrees that back us in science. All that being said, we are talking in generalities on this podcast. We do not actually know your particular situation. So proceed with common sense and maybe a little bit of experimentation on your end. And we hope that you make the world a more beautiful place by making work a more enjoyable place. See you next time on Management Muse.